Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Wanted to share another little meta update and talk a little bit about what's going on in Modern. Um, and I want to preface this by saying, I think that it is good for there to be a best deck in Modern. I think it's fine for a best deck to have a 20% share or rate or whatever play rate of winning decks. I think that that's fine, and so I think the MG community is famous for overreacting, for using very strong language, and always attacking. The boogeyman is always the best deck, and so I want to talk about the best decks and what I think. I do think there is an issue with the energy strategy. When I say energy, obviously I don't just mean all cards that generate energy in Modern. I'm specifically talking about the Boros Mardu, the Boros shell of energy. Mardu is obviously just splashing, but WotC thought they were crippling it, maybe, or affecting it by banning the Amped Raptor. I don't think it really affected the strategy at all. Banning the One Ring and Gigantha were just extra things they had to play anyways. They weren't actually things that affected the strategy. And as we see, it hasn't really done anything. Keep in mind, so for this one, this is different. You'll notice these numbers are different than the ones here. And so I have Goldfish open. A lot of people will use this. Goldfish is just taking every single 5-0 reported and counting it equally as meta share, whereas this is talking about all events and it includes paper events. And it's based on number of matches. So a 5-0 is not as weighed the same. Here a 5-0 is weighed the same as anything else, right? If you get a 5-0, it's the same as first place at a challenge. Here, it's taking the number of matches into consideration, which means if you go 8-0 or 9-0 in a challenge, it's weighted much higher than just winning than 5-0ing a league, if that makes sense. So what these numbers say is that Dimir mid range is actually seeing the most play, especially across big events and long events, not just winning 5-0s online. It's close, obviously. It's within 0.1%. And if you add up Boros and Mardu, obviously it's not close. You end up, with over 20% energy and 12% Dimir. So I want to talk about it a little bit. What do I think is the issue with energy? The main issue is this. Energy is both the best aggro and best mid-range strategy in Modern. The problem with having one deck be the best of both of those is that it doesn't really leave space for there to be another aggro deck or another mid-range deck. Because if this is the best version, why would you play a different version, right? Why would you just play Jund when you could play Mardu or Boros Energy? And so notice, there aren't any other aggro decks. You could maybe debate that Hollow One is an aggro deck, but it's an aggro deck that performs best as a synergy combo deck. You could debate that Footfalls, right, is kind of an aggro deck, but similar to Hollow One, it requires what is it called? It kind of basically requires it to be almost combo-y, and its matchups against Boros are going to be bad where it doesn't combo, right? It's the same with Domain Zoo and even Eldrazi, the Scam List. Some of these, yes, are kind of aggressive in strategy, but when I say aggro, I mean a dedicated aggro strategy. I'm talking about mono red Phoenix, or is it Phoenix even, or Burn, right? I think a meta is pretty healthy when burn can be 4 or 5%, right? The other thing is just notice the huge drop off, right? We have 20% energy, 12% Dimir, and then you have 7% the best combo deck right now, the most resilient combo deck. Then you have 6% here of a ramp deck, which is its own strategy, right? It's not mid range, it's not combo, it's kind of both, right? And then every other combo deck is below 4%. And they're just all combo decks. Because the only thing that can actually beat Dimir and energy is combo. And so that isn't really a healthy meta. And so you can love energy, that's fine. I'm not saying that liking energy or playing the best deck of either Dimir or energy is wrong. I just don't think it's healthy when there is no mid-range strategy being played and it's not viable. And there isn't really. The other thing is Dimir is called mid range, right? By the Valentin and Anil. Sorry, I probably pronounced your names wrong, but which is more accurate. I think it should be called Dimir Tempo or even Dimir combo, because now that it's playing like Unearth and Oculus, right? Like it's not really a control deck. Yes, sometimes they play Counterspell, but just playing a Counterspell, it's not really a control strategy. They're playing some of the best threats in the format in Oculus, Murktide, and Frog, and just playing the best cards that support that. So it's not really even a control deck anymore, even though a lot of times people refer to it as control. It's almost its own kind of combo. It's similar to like a Hollow One strategy. Hollow One's like, how do I get out this 4/4? Demir is like, how do I get out this 5/5 flyer that makes 2/2s? You know, I think that WotC has made it pretty clear they're kind of trying to push the power level of Modern by unbanning things to try to even things out. And it's very obvious, right? You look at this, like the unbans did not really affect the meta at all, other than Grinding Breach is the best combo deck because Mox Opal helps it so much. If they unban the Ritual, Ruby Storm would probably be the one up here. If they, Amulet Titan's up here because of Green Sun and Yawgmoth, right? Doing a little better than other combo decks because of that, but really didn't affect the format all that much. What do I think the answer is? What can we do going forward? I think that either in energy, I think Flage should be banned, and the reason why is it really anyways, it makes it so there's really only one thing to play in that slot. It's kind of the best in slot. If you're trying to play Is It Control, you should splash white and play Flage. If you're trying to play mono red aggro, you should splash white and play Flage. If you're playing a, white blue control, you should splash red for it. Like, if it's the best card in a Jeskai control deck, if it's the best card in a Boros aggro deck, it's the best card in a Mardu mid-range deck, it's the best card in a Goryo's combo deck, like it shouldn't, it's too reliable and effective of a finisher. And it's what makes the energy shell really be able to go the distance, because essentially as long as Flage is in the deck, cards like Pyroclasm, Anger of the Guards, Brotherhood's End, and even Supreme Verdict barely have effect, because it's like they play Guide, they play Ocelot, they make their little army, you wipe the board turn 4, great. They just arena a Flage and you're dead anyway. Right, like it doesn't actually set them back to board wipe them when they have this recurable threat that is so efficient. And so you take away Flage, and then Energy has to decide to actually be an aggro deck, like all in aggro, or they have to go more mid-rangey, and they can't just rely on one card to solve all their mid-range matchups, right? To solve all their problems with board wipes, they have to actually build a deck that has resiliency and consistency, and utilizes some more creative and interesting solutions, not just like, well, I have 4 Flage, and I play 2 or 3 or 4 Arena, so I don't care. I don't care about board wipes. It doesn't even affect my strategy, even though I'm a small creature deck aggro strategy. It takes away, it actually makes the deck have a weakness. Otherwise, I think it really has to be Ocelot or Guide. Have to be banned if we decide that even that creature aggro strategy is too strong. But I think that if you take Flage away, I think it allows the meta to kind of adapt to energy in a more like realistic way, to a way you'd adapt to like the Phoenix meta or even a Eldrazi aggro meta. As far as the Dimir decks, I do think the Oculus was pushed a little much. I feel like they didn't ever think that people, that whoever designed the card and thought like this is okay, did not at all think of the card Unearth. I think even if it just cost 1 more mana and maybe had some sort of like Murktide has some way to reduce its cost. If I similarly was like an 8 cost, but it had Delve, it essentially would read the same, right? You have to exile cards from your graveyard in order to cast it, but there'd be like a scale for it, and then like you could put it in the graveyard and return it, but you'd have to use a card like Persist, which is much more fair because it costs 2 mana instead of 1, and it doesn't have cycling built into it, and you wouldn't ever have a turn 2 eye that makes 7 power. It's just too swingy. I think Frog is very powerful and might long term just be unhealthy to be in the format, but I like Frog. I think it's a really interesting design, because it supports things like the Reanimator builds and can be in other decks. If a card has to go, I feel like Oculus should be the one to go, not the Frog itself. Or like Murktide's been fine for a long time, and Frog Tide was fine. I think the Oculus is really what pushed it into this weird tempo-y, combo-y deck. And before that, it was actually like, hey, well, this is just the best control shell, and it had about a 10% share of the meta, and that's fine. So those are my thoughts, not yours. Let me know your thoughts about the meta. Um, I meant to talk about the win rates here. Just to know that like there's a really low floor. I'm playing a deck like Breach Eldrazi, Splinter Twin, Reanimator, White Belcher, Brood Scale. These are ones that where it's like certain cards just beat the deck. Bad pilots just mean you're not going to win with it. Right? It's a low floor, but very high ceiling on a Breach Eldrazi or a Reanimator, because it's like the games you win, you can just win on turn 2 or 3, and there's nothing they can do about it. High ceiling on Blue Belcher because a skilled player just gives you a much higher win rate than unskilled. And then you have like Amulet Titans right in the middle here, right between 60 and 45, right in the middle at 50.9. But then like Ruby Storm has one of the highest expected win rates. They still have a pretty low floor, but they have this very high ceiling, and I think that has to do with like again good pilots, experienced pilots, and the fact that like you can have pretty consistent turn 2 wins. It doesn't really matter what the opponent's doing. Not a ton of hate that like can stop the Orum's Chant build, because people have to dedicate like 4 sideboard slots to counter spells, 4 sideboard spots to graveyard hate, right? Like there's just less that can hit this. And you see like Boros Energy doesn't have an insane win rate. Like their ceiling isn't even over 60. So, you know, WotC might be looking and be like, well, it's the most played, but like they're not winning too many things, right? So like we don't need to ban anything on these 2 decks. But I think that this is just unhealthy because look at the names of the decks and the fact that like there's no mid range, there's no aggro, there's just energy and Dimir, you know, and then a bunch of ramp or combo decks. But let me know what you think. What decks you're excited, what cards you think might get unbanned, etc. Hope you have a fantastic day.